kickoff segment. We're going to kick it off like this. We've done it previously. I haven't touched on many of the other fight nights, but we're going straight into UFC. UFC 253 main card. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty good card. I thought it was going to be one of the better cards I've seen, but it didn't live up to the hype as much as people wanted it to, and I'll actually get into that. But I'll actually go through the main card currently, and then we'll go from there. So, first fight of the night on the main card, Hakeem Dawadu versus Zubara Takugav. So this one was an interesting battle. So Hakeem Dawadu is actually one of the training partners with, or he goes to the same gym as Israel Adesanya, and Takugav actually came in overweight. So he didn't make weight, obviously had to forfeit a ton of his purse. Well, I think it was about 40%. I want to say it's 30%. But Takugav came in, heavier man, for whatever reason, didn't make weight, which I'll actually get into now. So these guys are professional fighters, right? They spend a ton of time getting ready for fights. And one of the issues that Israel Adesanya was talking about after his fight was the guys that don't want to make weight, that can't make weight. There's no excuse as to why these fighters are not able to make weight. They need to be ready, especially if they fight in a specific, weight class. They need to be around that weight. So if they get the call on late notice or whatever, there is no excuse as to why they do not make weight. This is their job, right? So missing weight, that's a competitive advantage. If you're weighing 4 or 5 pounds more than the other fighter, you'll have that more strength, more weight with your punches, with holding people up against the wall if you're a wrestler. I mean, this is a competitive advantage, and there needs to be some type of change in the rules as far as how they are penalized. Now, Adesanya said that they need to be fined 90% of their purse. They need to forfeit the 90% of their purse to the opponent. Currently, it's 30%, I believe. So 30%, if you don't make weight, 30% of your purse that you're supposed to make from this fight goes to your opponent. But at the same time, I'm willing to get rid of 30% of my purse if it gives me the competitive advantage, a slap on the wrist. You beat somebody, now you elevate, because wins, 30%, the wins is going to get you higher and higher to better fights. So that 30% could be made up on the back end. So 90%, now you're essentially almost fighting for free. So you want to have, there has to be a change. And this is not on the UFC side. I believe it's on the commission side. So, in this case, this is on Fight Island, so I'm not sure who is the commission that's overseeing the event. But for example, if it's in Las Vegas, the Nevada commission, they come up with a 30% purse, forfeit to the opponent. The commission needs to change this. Wherever they're fighting, the UFC, this needs to be negotiated, because the UFC, when people are missing weight, when fighters are missing weight, this is giving a competitive advantage to those people. And I'm sure Vegas also wants to see this happen, because if somebody misses weight 24 hours before the fight, that's going to change the odds, right? People are going to say, oh, okay, this person's a little heavier, although they're still going to fight. They forfeit 30% of their purse. Who cares? They got the competitive advantage. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Obviously, you don't want to see people miss weight, but it happens, right? There's valid explanations for it as well. So Takugav, I thought he was going to get the win over here versus Dawadu, but Dawadu was just a little bit more active when it came to the hands, quicker. Takugav had an awkward fighting style. As far as his striking, it was solid, but clearly boxing wasn't one of his strengths. And one of his strengths is actually wrestling. He had Khabib Nurmagomedov in his corner, and he was unable to get Dawadu to the ground. So Dawadu had excellent takedown defense throughout the fight. Again, was the more active fighter on his feet. And in the third round, Takugav was essentially, I wouldn't say he's technically running. So he was circling the ring as if he had won the first 2 rounds and had zero action in the third round. I mean, it could have been a 10-8 round based on his inactivity, but Dawadu was able to, be active in that third round, essentially cost Takugav the fight because this was a split decision fight. It was 2-1. So one judge seen it 29-28 for Takugav. And then the others, I think one of them had it 30-27. So he wasn't going to win that one. And I think the other one was 29-28. So Takugav could have potentially won the fight in the third round if he was active, but he was circling the ring and acting as if the fight was already over. So Hakeem Dawadu went ahead, got that decision in the third or after the third round, 3-round fight, and beat the heavier Takugav, who missed weight and got that pay increase, right? That 30% of Takugav's purse. So he came out a winner, and big ups to Dawadu. Excited to see his next fights. Dude is a good striker, and he's an exciting fighter. So the next one was Ketlin Vieira versus Sajara Eubank. So this one, I'll be honest, I wasn't really paying attention to this one. There was a lot of things happening in the household. So from what I've seen, I know that Vieira was able to get Eubank to the ground. I want to say at the end of the first after the end of the near the end of the first round, and then the second and third round, she was able to get her to the ground, essentially dominate the fight. Eubanks, again, she came in, did her best, but Vieira looked like the better fighter. And yeah, she got the win. So good to see her get that and see where she goes next. So the next fight was Kura France versus Brandon Royvo. So this one was actually a pretty interesting fight. Royvo, I want to say this is his second fight in the UFC. He coming in versus a ranked fighter in Kura France. And this was interesting. This is an interesting battle. Brandon Royvo, it's hard after watching this fight. This is my first fight watching him. After watching his fight, it's hard not to be a fan of his. He's very active. He's very crazy when it comes to his striking. He leaves himself open. Both of these guys were clipped at one point or another. Both of these guys were hurt at one point of the fight. I mean, there was spinning back elbows. I mean, everything. These guys were going at it for the first 2 rounds. And Brandon Royvo, again, was very impressive in this fight. He ended up getting Kura France in submission in the second round. So I am interested to see how high and how fast Brandon Royvo could go. I think he is a dangerous fighter. So we'll see exactly where he goes from here next. Again, this is a very impressive performance by him, and I am excited to see what he does next. Now we're getting to the co-main event. This was the one that people wanted to see. Jan Jones vacated the light heavyweight title, and now they're fighting for that vacated title. And when I say they, I'm talking about Dominic Reyes versus Jan Jojovich. This one was intense. I didn't think that this one was going to go the distance. It clearly didn't go the distance for those of you that watched it. Dominic Reyes came into the fight very confident, and some may say overconfident, to be honest. And that's kind of where I got. That's kind of the feeling I got during the interviews leading up to the fight, especially the weigh-ins. The dude was coming in like he was already the champion. And you can't even blame him based on how he performed against Jan Jones. The fight was close, man. The fight was close. If I was a judge, it would have been 3-2. It could have went 3-2 either way. Again, I'm not the judge. I had it 3-2, but again, I was going for Jan Jones, so I'm biased. But I honestly thought that Dominic Reyes, you could make a very valid argument that he won the first 3 rounds of that fight versus Jan Jones. So he came in like, hey, I'm still undefeated. I beat Jan Jones. Although on paper, he really didn't. He came in as, the guy that couldn't be touched. And unfortunately, that might have led to his demise in this fight. I mean, Jan Jojovich came in, riding a nice little winning streak. Very dangerous fighter, heavy hands. Man, this one was a tough one to call. I didn't want to give my prediction on this one because it could have went either way, right? It could have went either way. But as soon as the fight kicked off, both fighters, there's always a fill-out process when you're getting into the, most of the time, some of these guys just go head in or, go straight in. head on, trying to knock each other's blocks off. This one was a little bit more strategic, a little bit more tactical, feel out round, first round. I know Jan Jojovich, as far as his leg kicks, probably two of the most devastating leg kicks to the body I've seen. And yes, that might be overreaction, but you could tell after those two leg kicks to Dominic Reyes' side, his right side of his body, you could tell that those hurt, and those specifically left a lot of damage, or put a lot of damage to Dominic Reyes. You could tell, because after two kicks, it looked like he got hit by a baseball bat in his ribs after those two kicks, and they were pretty loud. So Dominic Reyes felt that. Surprisingly, it went past round one, but round two is when Jan Jojovich actually started putting the pressure on Dominic Reyes, ended up breaking his nose, I want to say with a jab, and then ended up finishing him off. I mean, Dominic Reyes was they got into a little scuffle near the fence, and both of them were throwing crazy. It just happened that Dominic Reyes got caught and fell. Jan finished him off. And then now he is the new light heavyweight champion for the UFC. And it's exciting to see that because, again, he's a good fighter. He's very dangerous. I'm sure there's going to be a rematch. Dominic Reyes, again, he's proven that he is a championship caliber fighter. Now, I don't know if he will have to go through the ranks again to earn a title shot, but if they went to immediate rematch, I don't think anyone would be, I don't think anyone would complain about that, because this is a good matchup, and again, I would tune in for a second one. So again, big shout out to Jan Jojovich, who was low key big underdog in this fight at plus 250, something around there. A lot of people weren't really giving him a chance, again, because of Dominic Reyes' performance versus Jon Jones. There was a lot of people putting stock into that, rightfully so. I mean, Dominic Reyes looked fairly good, but Jon Jones also looked pretty bad in that fight, right? He wasn't the usual Jon Jones that we see. So I'm sure Dominic Reyes will find his way again to fight for the title, but it's just a bad loss, man. He needs to pay attention more and get that hunger. He needs to get that hunger. Again, he came in very confident and cocky. Again, some people think that he was overconfident, and that might have led to his demise. But Jan Jojovich, your new light heavyweight champion in the UFC. So we'll see who is next for him. And one of those people that actually whose name has been thrown out going against Jan next is who I'm about to talk about in the main event. Israel Adesanya. Israel Adesanya. So obviously he went against Paulo Costa. This was probably one of the most anticipated fights in UFC history. You have two undefeated fighters going against each other. I mean, you could essentially say in their primes, and this one was a tough one for me. Again, this one was like, I don't know who's going to win. I'm going for Israel Adesanya, but I'm afraid, right? I'm afraid. Paulo Costa is a human wrecking ball. He's going in at 100 miles an hour trying to knock people's blocks off. He's a volume puncher. He'll smother you with a ton of punches, body, head, and just take the life out of opponents. But one thing that Israel Adesanya said prior to the fight is all the guys that Paulo Costa fought were human punching bags. They're standing right in front of him. He's like, I'm not going to do that. I mean, that's, it's just not smart, right? So you have Israel Adesanya, who's one of the best strikers in UFC. You can make an argument that he is the best striker in UFC. And then you have Paulo Costa, who, and Israel Adesanya is actually a great counterpuncher, going against Paulo Costa, who is, again, a human wrecking ball. He's coming at you 100 miles an hour as soon as the bell rings, to start the round and to end it. He's coming at you 100%, 110, and he's not going to slow down. So we had the makings of a great fight. But as soon as the fight started, Paulo Costa literally did the exact same thing as Yoel Romero. Did the exact same thing. Wasn't attacking, very, I mean, he didn't do exactly the same thing because Romero literally stood there for a good 2 minutes without even moving his feet. Like, he wasn't even moving. He stayed in one part of the ring the whole time for 2 minutes. Paulo Costa was doing somewhat like that. There was no activity. It was pretty much kind of waiting for Adesanya to come at him, Izzy to come at him. Was talking mess to kind of bait him to come in. Adesanya was not falling for that. He was still staying on the outside, chopping his leg with crazy leg kicks, these calf kicks. I mean, he was just killing that front leg of Paulo Costa, his left leg. And Paulo Costa, for what it's worth, I'm not a fighter as far as a UFC fighter or anything like that, but it looked like Paulo Costa had a pretty good poker face. But I mean, he was telling Israel Adesanya, "Hey, keep kicking my leg, whatever." And man, you could tell those leg kicks counted up because it was getting very red, and you can see, I think it was starting to bleed. Like, he got cut on his leg too. So, Israel Adesanya was throwing those sharp leg kicks. I mean, those look terrible, and Paulo Costa looked like he was eating them, but he really wasn't. Like, he was absorbing them, and he was paying the toll for crossing that bridge. And then in the second round, Israel Adesanya kind of figured him out. Like, okay, he's not going to come at me. So, we're just going to kind of keep waiting. And then once we get close, we're going to do an exchange, and actually caught Paulo Costa on the temple. He grazed the side of his head on one of those. I want to say it was a left hook, grazed the side of his head. Paulo Costa drops, and Izzy, mounts a full mount, and then they end the fight. Fight's called. Israel Adesanya, man, made it look super easy. I mean, it was like Paulo Costa was not an undefeated fighter. That's not the Paulo Costa that we've seen. And even if that Paulo Costa showed up, I don't know if he would have won. I don't think he would have won. Israel Adesanya was just, he was in the zone. Like, you could tell that he wasn't playing around this time. No dance moves, nothing. He came into the ring, was just, in his own zone. And from there, just went to work, got his lunch pail, went to work, put in that work, clocked in, clocked out, and got a championship and made it look easy, man. It was insane. That was very impressive performance. Paulo Costa did not look like the fighter that everybody thought he was. Low-key looked like an amateur. So Israel Adesanya, who's going to challenge him next? I don't know what's next for him. Obviously, people want to see him move up to the light heavyweight championship or light heavyweight division. DC, Daniel Cormier, actually went as far as to say that Israel Adesanya is the best light heavyweight champion, or the best light heavyweight in the UFC, and he hasn't fought one fight at light heavyweight. So Jan Jojovich, obviously, he wouldn't mind, fighting him. Israel Adesanya, that would be a pretty good fight. But man, what is next? Who else is going to challenge Israel Adesanya? I mean, I don't see it. I don't see anybody really challenging him until he moves up to the light heavyweight division for the UFC. There's really no one else to challenge him. Now, you could throw out names of fighters that he hasn't fought yet, right? I've seen Chris Weidman saying he'll beat him. Cannonier is one that Israel Adesanya called out next for a fight if he beats Robert Whittaker. So we'll see how that goes. But really, I mean, I don't really see anyone beating him. So until he goes to the light heavyweight division, that's when you see the challenge. Man, this is crazy. UFC, leading the charge again, putting on great cards, putting up fights that people want to see when they want to see them. The complete opposite of boxing, right? Boxing is, at least to me, has been dwindling away after Mayweather retired. You have Canelo doing his fights, but I mean, really no headliners. People don't even want to fight each other. It's really the heavyweight division that's really carrying boxing right now, with Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. These guys are going to eventually start fighting each other. I mean, Wilder and Fury already fought, but they're about to fight for a third time. I mean, other than the heavyweight division, there's really nothing else to look forward to unless Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford fight. Obviously, they're going to try to drag that one out. It's complete opposite of what the UFC is doing, and obviously the UFC is growing for that exact reason. They're putting up fights that people want to see when they want to see them. So boxing needs to take notes. They're not, because they're money hungry. And these promoters, they're just worried about getting that bag. And yes, you get that bag, but it's killing the sport. It's killing the sport of boxing. So UFC 253, great card. If you guys have not checked it out, I think UFC might make it available this upcoming weekend, so you can check that out. But I don't know how they do it. I know boxing usually does that. They have a pay-per-view, and then the following week you watch it kind of for free. I don't know if the UFC does that, but I'm sure there's ways you can watch these fights for free. And I'm not saying break the law, but if you have a chance to watch these fights, go ahead, watch them. Again, I thought it was a pretty good main card. Could have been better as far as meeting the hype, but, it was there. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button for more fire sports takes. And for those of you who are on the go, make sure you subscribe to our full show, which airs every Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and a bunch more. Until then, I'm chucking it up, and I'll see you guys next time.